All right, we are in Unit 2. We are in Chapter 9. We're still looking at our regression wisdom, but mainly we are trying to focus on some example problems and some practice problems related to taking a look at scatter plots, taking a look at linear regression models, seeing if they are appropriate, when they are appropriate, how their effects of outliers, any kind of lurking variables that might be there as well. So taking a look at all this stuff, putting it all together to see what we get. Again, if I'm moving too fast, okay, pause the videos, write down the problems, try your best, see what you can do. Let's just dive right in here. It says, this has the trend of decreasing differences in age for marriage, right? So we just did this. So it looks like that's the difference. Here's the plot of the residuals, kind of all over. And it says the scatter plot and the residual plot from 1975 to 2003 among what regression line. So here's what we're looking at. So as we're looking at that, I'm not noticing a pattern. I'm going with that. So it says, why is r squared higher for the first model? All right. And we're trying to figure all this jazz out. So, and then is this linear model appropriate for post 1975? So do you think we should be doing this? And what does the slope say about marriage age? And explain why it's not reasonable to interpret the y-intercept. So taking a look here, it says, well, the data from the 1880s to 1950s are high leverage points, right? They're way outside of what we end up having, right? Since 1980, right? Or sorry, since 1900. So those points, since they generally follow the same linear trend of data, those data points increase the correlation of r squared. And it says, this has the trend of decreasing difference in age at the first seam, which we just did. That was exercise 22 before. And the scatter plots show from 75 on. So I'm only looking at 1975 on in this data. So when it says for part A, why is r squared higher for the first model that we did? The data from the 1850s and 90s, they just had some higher leverage points. And since they generally follow the same linear pattern, those data points increase the correlation. That's all. They helped it stay in a better line for us to see what was happening. That's all that it basically means. Part B, though, the residual plot shows a slight bend. Not much. I mean, it kind of looks like everything's there, but it looks like we're kind of doing that slightly. So the linear model is probably still appropriate for us to use. It's not like I can see a total trend, but we should make sure as we're doing this that we are cautioned without doing it. And for every 10 years that passes, because it's asking, or is this one, what does the slope say about the marriage, right? What does the slope say about marriage? And what we were arguing before was this is dealing with the slope. So as the years go by, negative 0.02, so it goes down that. So as a year goes by, it goes down roughly 0.03 years, which is like, wow, what's that? So that's why we basically say, all right, well, let's move the decimal. Let's say instead of 1 year, let's make it 10 years. So then they're saying, okay, well, if 10 years, it goes down about 0.3 years. So for every 10 years that passed this way, the age difference came together by 0.3. It was just easier to see than saying, oh, well, every year it goes 0.03 down, right? And then D, it says the y-intercept is the prediction of the model in the year 0 then. If I plug in 0, that's what it would be. So over 2,000 years ago, right? Does that make sense? So me trying to use their model in what year and to see what was happening, it really wouldn't make sense if I tried to set up my line and my regression, like my linear regression line, it's that. If I plugged in 0, because I'm actually plugging in the years, I'd be plugging in 0. So the y-intercept would tell me what I feel like would happen, and that data is way out there. So you want to talk about extrapolation. If I plugged in 0, the year 0, it's nonsensical in terms of whether we care about what happened then, and it's so far away from the data given it wouldn't even make sense in the first place, right? So the point is that wraps up our practice problems to see where they are at. And again, this was just kind of like to zoom in on a specific portion of the data was mainly what this problem was and what it was focusing in on, only from 75 to 2003. If you have any other questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to let me know.